So here we are planting. We're planting trees at the Rosemont Preserve. The trees we're going to be planting are big cone Douglas fir, which is one of the very few conifers that grows at low elevations that's native to California. It grows in the San Gabriel Mountains from about 2,000 feet up to about 5,000 or 6,000 feet. So you'll find it on a lot of the trails that you go in the San Gabriel Mountains. And we are planting it here at the Rosemont Preserve. It is also one of the few trees that does well in amongst chaparral, which is the plant community here at Rosemont Preserve. So I have prepared a hole here. I've dug the hole, and one of the things I've done is I both dug the hole and then I poured a bunch of water in. Soil needs to be moist when you plant the tree, or anything that you plant in the ground. The soil needs to be moist, and if it's dry when you dig, pour a bunch of water in the hole and go off and dig the next hole and wait for the water to soak in. You dig the hole big enough or deep enough to fit the tree, fit the plant. Not necessarily the whole pot, but up to where the soil is. And so this hole is actually plenty deep. And so, once you've got the hole deep enough, and you've verified it by putting the tree in, or plant, because this applies to trees and shrubs and perennials, any kind of plant that's going in the ground. Then I'm going to take the pot and kind of wiggle it a little bit. If it's a round pot, you can kind of massage the sides just to loosen the soil a little bit. And then I'm not going to hold the tree by the trunk. That's not a handle. I'm going to kind of cradle the root ball, and pull it up end it over the hole so any debris, any dirt can fall into the hole, and then kind of wiggle it and shake it. And some of the root ball is going to fall apart. Don't worry about it. Just kind of, and some of the soil is going to fall off. Again, don't worry about it. As long as you get the tree into the native soil, into the hole fairly quickly. You don't want to let it sit out for a half hour. Get it in the dirt right away. And since the soil fell apart, I'm going to hold the tree at the right elevation. What I want to make sure is that the place where the soil was in the pot, which is where the trunk becomes root, that's called the root crown, and that's very critical that it not be buried. Burying the root crown can lead to soil fungus and all kinds of problems for the tree. So I've got it at about the right place, and I'm going to take the dirt and move it back into the hole. And as we do, as I push dirt in, I'm going to kind of, I don't know how you call it, but just kind of settle it a little bit in the hole so that we don't have any air pockets. You want the roots to get in direct contact with soil. You don't want to have gaps there, because that will not help the roots. As I said before, the soil is kind of dry, so what I'm going to do as I fill here, and you can see by the dust it's dry, I'm going to kind of layer some water with some soil. And it's also important that when you water, you have a watering can that has a very fine spray, because once you're done, if you have a hose and you just have a stream of water going in there, it's going to churn up the soil, and that's not going to help the plant. So a little bit of soil, dry soil, a little bit of water. And then settle the soil in. A bit more water. Settle it in. And you notice there's some rocks in here. Little rocks are not a big deal. The roots will adapt to it, and since the trees that we're planting are native to the hillsides here, they are used to growing in this kind of soil. So rocks will not bother them. They will just grow right through and around the rocks. just about done here. And what I'm going to do, this actually ended up being not as high up as I wanted, so I'm going to sculpt the soil around it so that it doesn't end up in a hole. But I will leave a little basin on the uphill side of this plant. That will ensure that we can give it some water. So that's about how I want it to end up. And I double check to make sure that there is some space behind it. I'm going to double check to make sure that there is some space behind it so that we can have a little puddle of water, which we'll need, that's where we'll put the drip emitter, and that's where we can give it some water because it needs some water through this first season in the ground. But that drainage is such that the tree is never going to sit in a puddle. That's very important, that the root crown is never in a puddle. And that's about how it should be. I'm going to take some of the rocks that I dug up. These are, believe it or not, I dug up from the hole that it was in. And I'm going to put those around the tree. Here's some more that came from the hole. And if you don't have rocks, don't worry about it. Oh, almost forgot. Deer cage. If you're planting in an area where there are browsing herbivores, deer, you'll need to put a cage around it to keep the deer from munching your nice, tender young tree. So, basically any chicken wire cage that's like 3 or 4 feet tall, chicken wire or any kind of wire fencing will do. And then we will toss a couple of rocks in here to secure the cage so that it's not going to go anywhere. It'll settle in. And then the last thing we're going to do here is apply some mulch. Mulch is any kind of, actually gravel can be used as a mulch. I prefer coarsely chopped organic material. And this is left over from a tree trimmer. So basically any kind of chipped up tree trimmings are good for a mulch. And we're just going to put them inside the cage and around the area. Mulch does a lot of good things for us. It shades the soil, it cools the soil, and as it decomposes over time, it nourishes the soil, and it also protects against erosion. So what will happen is the rain will fall, and the mulch will absorb the force of the rain so that the rain does not carry the soil away. And then when just kind of settle the mulch around here and make it kind of even it up a little bit. And then we're going to water the tree one more time. And ideally we'll get all of the mulch wet. And when you put a lot of mulch, my target for mulch is a layer like 4 to 6 inches. And when you put that much mulch on, when you water, you need to make sure to supply enough water that it goes all the way through the mulch. Sometimes I've had it, if I get the mulch nice and wet and I think that I've got enough water there, I dig underneath and find that the soil is still bone dry. So you sometimes have to add more water to get through the mulch, but it's worth it in the long run because the tree will benefit. So I think that's it. Any questions? Okay.